Richard, the new engine, was thrilled by the express. He loved thundering down the line, his fire burning fiercely and the coaches clattering behind him. The passengers were most impressed, and the other engines were grateful for his help, all except one. "Ridiculous," James scoffed. "He's hardly been on the island a month, and he's given the express. Whatever happened to seniority?" "You certainly sound like a senior, with all that boiler aching," teased Duck. "Even if you had the express, you'd just grumble about being overworked. You should be thanking Richard." "Thanking him?" James gawked. "For what? I'm stuck on maintenance trains because of him." "I must say, it's quite nice getting to take the express," said Boko humbly. "It really makes you feel a part of the railway. Let Richard have his time, James. Perhaps he'll need a break soon, and then you'll have your chance." James said no more and fussed off. Later, James backed down onto his works train at the big station. Richard sizzled at the platform. "All right there, James," he beamed. "You enjoying your day?" "Not as much as you, I imagine," he grumbled. "Oh, you noticed," Richard replied obliviously. "Well, it's very nice taking the express and all, but I'd be happy with any train. It's good to be moving again." "You're not getting worn out?" quizzed James. "Well, only a little," sighed Richard. "Just getting back into shape, that's all." Just then the guard's whistle blew. "Oh, that's my cue," said Richard. "Goodbye, James, and thanks for taking the maintenance trains." Of course Richard meant this genuinely, but James was seething. "He's mocking me," he fumed. "Happy with any train, is he? Doesn't even appreciate what he's got." James spent the rest of the day with the maintenance crews. He slowly moved the breakdown cranes where they were needed, as they loaded old scrap into trucks and lowered the new steel into place. The snail's pace of it all further irritated James, who could think of nothing but Richard. I'll show him, he muttered. He was rough with the cranes as he moved them about. Finally, as he bumped them again, there was a snap. "You stupid engine," scolded the foreman. "You've damaged the support cables. Now we can't secure the cranes." "So?" James replied. "So?" huffed the foreman. "We can't take them back to the yard in case they start swinging. And with how you've been banging about, that'll likely be the case. We'll have to leave them here overnight." This, of course, didn't bother James. The men crammed into the works coach, and James hauled the train with no cranes back to the yard. The next morning, Richard found it hard to wake up. His fire wouldn't start, and his joints felt stiff. "I don't know what's wrong," he wheezed. "I felt just fine yesterday." "Oh, you poor engine," said James with mock sympathy. "I tell you what, why don't I take your train? And then once you get up and going, you can have an easy day out with the maintenance crews, Oh, thank you, James," Richard smiled weakly. "Most kind of you." "Don't mention it," James muttered slyly as he headed for the station. James could see the coaches waiting at the platform and began to grow excited, until he saw a familiar face at the head of the train. "Good morning, James," beamed Boko. "Have you come to see me off?" "What are you doing?" demanded James. "I meant to be taking Richard's first train. Get off. Go on." "But this isn't Richard's first train," replied Boko, puzzled. "I was scheduled to take the express today." "Then what am I supposed to be doing?" growled James. "Ah, James," said Sir Topham Hatt. "I hear you're covering for Richard. You must be off to the works. Our new rake of express coaches are waiting to be brought back here." James could hardly believe it. His plan had backfired. empty coaches, he grumbled as he set off up the line. Now, for all his good intentions, Richard could be a bit clumsy. By the time he finally rolled out of the shed, he was still feeling a bit groggy. Nice, easy day, he yawned. Oh, careful, called the foreman. We don't need another careless engine on the job today. Sorry, sir, called Richard. I'll be more careless. I mean, less careful. He sighed, still trying to wake up. No one had bothered telling Richard about the crane cables. Finally, the foreman came up to him. We need to move to another bridge further up the line. Signalman's given us a path between the regular trains, and we can't miss it. Yes, sir, yawned Richard. Richard found it hard to start. With a bump, he got the cranes and trucks moving. He picked up speed, but no one saw the crane arm starting to swing about. At that moment, James came fussing along. Empty coaches, he grumbled. He saw Richard coming towards him. Better still, he muttered. Richard, shorter. Suddenly, James saw the crane arm swinging wildly from side to side. Stop, cried James. Stop! But Richard was going too fast. Both engines applied their brakes. The crane arm had swung right into one of the new coaches. There was a hole in the wall now. The compartments were crushed and the seats flattened. The rest of the coaches quavered in fear, and James was in shock. Are you all right, James? Cried Richard. But the replying voice didn't belong to James. Richard, bellowed Sir Topham Hatt, what is the meaning of this? I don't know, sir. I'm truly sorry, sir, Richard stammered. I was just going to the next work site, and you left without having the crane arm secured, I presume? I suppose so, sir, Richard replied sadly. Sir Topham Hatt sighed. Brand new coaches ruined just like that. Be very thankful, Richard, he added sternly, that those coaches were empty. Richard gulped. He was glad for that. You will spend the rest of the day in the shed, finished Sir Topham Hatt. We shall discuss this later. James will take the express until further notice. Without another word, Richard puffed sadly away to the sheds. James took the coaches back to the works, and then made his own way to the shed. He got the express just as he'd wanted, but it didn't feel right. He puffed home with much to consider.